Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom. How's it going?
Tony, it's wonderful. We are at the time of the football season when I constantly think, oh, it's so great that football's back, but why is it so many degrees outside, Tony? Why is it so hot? It's miserable here at these football games. And then we had a Labor Day weekend game where the kickoff temperature was like 70 degrees, and the forecast for Saturday against Grambling is also 70 degrees. And it's like, is this the good season? This feels like this is going to be the good season.
I hadn't looked that far ahead. That's pretty impressive to get two early season games where you're probably going to live. Like you're arguably, and pretty good chance of survival. And that's not always the case with some of these games where you're just standing on the plastic and the rubber and hoping that you don't burst into flames. But maybe, we'll see what Indian summer has for you, Tom. In October, one of these, your blood starts to thicken up, and then you get to like an 84-degree game. You're like, whoa, I can't do this. I'm just going to tap out. So we are here. We are doing our rewatch of the Texas game. In 1 week, Tom, we'll get to do a rewatch of the Grambling game.
Can we just review the halftime shows, the band performances? Because, I feel like we need to make a pact that we're just not going to talk about any starters at all on that show. And we're just going to talk about, here are guys who we will never talk about on these shows again, at least for the rest of the season. Lessons are going to be learned next week. I hope most of them are involving the band.
Yeah, it'll be a different week. It's going to be a spring game in September for that one. With this one, as we do our rewatch, we're getting to talk a lot about, I think, some of the stuff that we didn't get to talk about after the game with our instant reaction, because we were just basically answering questions throughout that entire 90 minutes that we did. So having to go back and getting an opportunity to watch this, I think the first thing that stood out for me on the rewatch is Arvell Reese being all over the place. And you see that certainly some live, but then you see sometimes he's at defensive end, or, on the edge over the, like, past the defensive end and outside of the tackles, outside of the tight end. And either he's rushing the passer, or he's just coming out and playing tight end or linebacker, or he's dropping into coverage to defend the flats. Or sometimes, he's listed as middle linebacker. That's what we call him. I think maybe he actually played middle linebacker, maybe 20 snaps in this game, in terms of where you would expect to see him. And that was also a fun part as I'm going through this rewatch, just trying to find him and seeing, because he's as big as a defensive end. He and Sonny Styles are the same size, and they both have like round jersey numbers. So you're like, is that Arvell? Is that Sonny? But just watching him, and then also watching everybody else finally get to see him, and watching him for the first time, we're like, this guy, who is this guy? And I think my main takeaway, Tom, is that we're probably only getting one season of Arvell Reese as Ohio State starting middle linebacker.
Yeah, that sort of does feel like where this might be headed. And you watch all the stuff that Matt Patricia's doing with him, and all the stuff that Matt Patricia can do with Sonny Styles, and all the, CJ Hicks and all these other guys on this defense. And it's like, I understand now why Matt Patricia is always in a good mood every time we see him, because he spent the last 20 years in the NFL where you are trying to scratch and claw for a 3% advantage in one spot. And then it's like you get to Ohio State, and it's like, even against the number one team in the country, you have freakish athletes who can do stuff that other people on the field can't do. That makes your life so much better as a defensive coordinator. And he certainly has made the most of that. But yeah, Arvell Reese is right at the top of my list for things I noticed on the rewatch. He was all over the place. They used him in all sorts of different ways. He's someone who I think it was the halftime of the Notre Dame Miami game on ESPN or ABC, whatever it was, on Sunday night. And they did a whole segment on like all the creative stuff that they, schematically that Matt Patricia did with Arvell Reese. And, he's someone who, the likelihood that Arvell Reese ends the season as a first team All-American went up by about 70% during that game, because I was like, everyone saw that game, everyone saw him, everyone's going to remember him now, and then you're going to look at him and go, oh, it's that guy that does the cool stuff for Ohio State, and he plays all over the place, and he's not, he's a middle linebacker, but also he's he's a strong side defensive end, unless he's a weak side defensive end, unless he's covering someone out in the flat like a will linebacker. I mean, he just whatever, man. Wherever you need him, he will be there. He will do some cool stuff. Yeah, he was right at the top of my list. I was very impressed with him, and I had the exact same thought that you did. Hope Ohio State fans enjoy this season of Arvell Reese as the starter.
Yeah, and I wrote about this on Sunday at BuckeyeHuddle.com, and I charted where he was on every snap in first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter. So I've got some diagrams up that you can see. But yeah, it's like he's and I did the same thing for Sonny Styles, I think 2 years ago with his first start when he was the nickel and wherever he would line up, and Arvell can just smash into an offensive lineman and then disengage and track down a mobile quarterback in Arch Manning. And he did some things that were very, very impressive. It wasn't perfect. It's the first game, 9 tackles, 1 sack. We'll see. He had some nice pressure in there, and everybody on the internet found out for the first time what a coffee house blitz is. It's like, oh, okay, that new terminology. If you say it, then people are going to think, oh, look at this try hard. But he got to do some fun things, and he was capable. And I think that's a huge takeaway from this as well. He was up to the challenge for Matt Patricia.
Yeah, for sure. And now the question is, okay, what else does Matt Patricia have? What other fun terminology are we going to get introduced to later this year through the diabolical combination of Matt Patricia and Arvell Reese? Let's talk next about the other side of the ball real quickly, because as excited as everyone was about the defense, I saw some sort of grumbling about the approach on offense for Ohio State. And, we can get into the running game itself later, but because I think the running game itself and some of the results for the running game itself were maybe a little bit of an offshoot of the approach that they took on offense, which was, you don't do anything stupid. Let Texas be the ones who make the big mistake that swings the game. That's what they did. They let Texas, they held on to the ball. It was a real Tressel ball performance on a day when Jim Tressel was there at the stadium. Hang on to the ball. You take your shot when you have a chance to take your shot. But it was a lot of just sort of, don't do anything stupid. Don't put anyone in a position where they have to get outside of their comfort zone. Julian Sayin, I thought, managed the game really well. It was interesting to me that, everyone said, well, he only had him throw the ball downfield once. You look at that 4th and 1, the one to Max Clare, where you had Jeremiah Smith open. Very clearly, like Ryan Day's talking to him on the sideline after that play, very clearly the ball should have gone to Jeremiah Smith there. It's a first-time starter. It happens. It didn't cost them the game. It's fine. You're not going to grade out perfectly as a quarterback. The ball was probably supposed to go there. If you throw that one downfield, then you've got a couple, then you potentially have 2 downfield touchdowns, because it was there. You just needed to put it up and let him run under it. That, I wonder how much just that would have changed people's minds on they were too conservative, and how much that would have maybe force Texas to back up and open up the run game a little bit more. Because, all this stuff is sort of interconnected. If Texas had scored a couple touchdowns in the first half, guess what? They would not have been running that conservative of a game plan. They didn't need to run a more aggressive game plan. They had one, they have those options in there if they need them, but they didn't need them because the defense shut Texas out 56 minutes. So I think that, there's a lot of, number one, it's week 1. Don't freak out. It's fine. The good stuff, this is the most success is never final and failure is never fatal week of the season in the college football world, because you'll do stuff in week 1, and if it's good, it's like, that's great. It doesn't necessarily mean that's going to continue forever. And if it's bad, it's like, that's fine. That doesn't mean it's going to continue forever. You're gonna learn a lot. You're gonna improve a lot. You're gonna change a lot after week 1. The most important thing was they got out with a win, and that was, Ryan Day said, that was job 1 and mission accomplished.
Yeah, it kind of goes into my next thing is the depth of throws. And I think about the only thing that I would take away from the Grambling game and the passing game is if it continues to be short stuff. Then it's like, this should not be happening against Grambling. And then it's like, well, maybe we're just being trolled, and things will start to open up after that. But as I've done over the years with Michigan Monday, watching JJ McCarthy or Davis Warren or whomever, Alex Orji, like not throw the ball downfield, it's like, well, let's chart the depth of throws to see like just how bad it is. So, going through this, I was like, I should probably do the same thing with Julian Sayin. And of his 20 passes, 10 of them were 3 yards or fewer, 3 yards or less downfield. And so like he only threw 3 passes over 10 yards downfield and completed one of them. One of them was dropped by Max Clare on that 4th down. But again, I think this is all by design right now. And it is the design you would assume is because of Texas, not because of Ohio State. Certainly, why would you design this because of Ohio State? And so I expect that to change. He had threw more passes behind the line of scrimmage than beyond 10 yards, 3. And we knew they would have to throw the ball behind the line of scrimmage to get the ball to Jeremiah. So that all made sense. He had 10 targets in this one, 6 catches. They got the ball to him where they could. And so I just wanted to see what it was like, to get an idea of how short this stuff was. And it was pretty short, but I don't think that's the way Julian Sayin wants to operate this offense. And having watched them do it, I'm guessing Brian Hartline and Ryan Day are like, okay, we don't need to do that again.
No, I don't think they need to do that again. There was a lot of, like you said, just get the ball out to Jeremiah Smith, get it out of his hands. Because I don't know how confident they were in their pass pro, what their pass pro was going to be. That was certainly one of my big questions going into the game. And it felt like they held up pretty darn well in pass pro over the course of the game. But you certainly had times when there was pressure in Julian Sayin's face. And it was just kind of like, get the ball out of his hands, get it into Jeremiah Smith's hands, because the odds of Jeremiah Smith doing something cool with the football in his hands are way higher than pretty much anyone else on the field. So they were just getting it out to him. And he didn't end up with any huge plays. Honestly, the one that he probably had the best chance for a big gain was one that he dropped, where it was, I think it was out, he was like out to the left flats and just dropped it. And it didn't, had an opportunity for maybe a little bit of a catch and run, and tried to run before the catch. But yeah, I don't think that was, there was nothing that I looked at in that game and thought, oh, they don't believe in him at all. Like, very clearly they're lining him up for, he took the shot downfield to Carnell Tate for the touchdown. They were lining him up for a 4th and 1. Congratulations. It's your first drive as a college quarterback. It's 4th and 1. We are going to dial up the bomb it downfield to Jeremiah Smith play on 4th and 1. I mean, that's literally the holy Buckeye call, right? And you're putting that on the table for him in his first drive as a college quarterback. That's one of those things where you can tell me you believe in him all you want. Mm-hmm. You're showing me there just by calling that. So that in and of itself makes me think, okay, this is not going to be how it is forever. This was a very sort of bespoke to the game situation. One of the most impressive plays that he had, this kind of got lost in some ways in everything else, but rewatching it was like, man, this was a huge throw in a really, really important moment. He had a free rusher in his face. This was like 3 minutes or so to go in the first half. There's a free rusher in his face on 3rd and 3. He's in the end zone, and then he throws it out and hits Carnell Tate for a first down. And if you're a, first time starter, you're playing a very good opponent, you're in your own end zone, you've got a free rusher, like all of that should be, sparks flying out the ear holes of your helmet. And he just calm, cool, and collected, made the throw. It was not an easy throw, made a real good throw. Carnell Tate came back to go get it, made a nice play to get a first down. That was one of those things. It was not, it's not something that's going to make the highlight package, because it didn't end up, with any points on that drive. But it was a really consequential play to get them out of a bad spot where a lot of bad stuff could have happened there. And he turned a potential really negative play into a really positive play, which is another really good sign to me.
And on that play, you had 2 tight ends colliding into each other and taking somebody out that could have been a receiver in the flats. And Sayin was able to just remain calm and keep his eyes downfield. And for me, that's really just the big takeaway. And it was watching it live as well as this guy is composed. This does not seem too big for him at all. And we'll continue to see more and more from him. Speaking of the tight ends, I guess looking back, Max Clare, 23 snaps in that game. Will Kazmarek, 48. Bennett Christian, 28. That was interesting to me. But we also knew that this was, we knew they were going to play a bunch of 12. We didn't know it would be this conservative. We're not shocked. And so running the ball as much as they did and not throwing it as much as they did kind of maybe neuters Max Clare a little bit. Again, I expect to see him playing more and more to the other side of the ball, Tom. And I'm sure you've talked with Ross about this now, and you can just go off and on all of this. Larry Johnson is no longer just a 4-down defensive line coach, because we saw them with a ton of odd fronts, some 3-down, some 5-down, and this was not just a standard 2 defensive ends, nose tackle, 3 tech. They were all over the place, and I think using the defensive line that Ohio State has right now, getting them some rest where they could, and just changing things up and constantly changing the picture for Arch Manning. It was a different view on most possessions in terms of, okay, now this is the front that I'm facing. Now this is the front that I'm facing. And we've seen that for a while watching Michigan over the years, where they've done a lot of odd fronts and even fronts, and they'll change it up. And we started seeing that at the end of last year, but now this is what the defense is now.
Yeah, it is a really interesting defense. I have not done the defense show with Ross yet, so I cannot cheat off of his test, sadly, but it was definitely a real mix and match approach to the defensive line, which is good. That makes you unpredictable. And with the talent that they have and the different types of the body types they've got, and you have CJ Hicks out there now, and you have Arvell Reese out there now, and you've got these guys who are a little bit different than your typical, the defensive ends weigh exactly 245 pounds. The defensive tackles weigh exactly 300 pounds. You've kind of gotten away from some of that to a certain degree. And now you've got kind of more dynamic guys who can do a bunch of different stuff, and a defensive coordinator who's going to ask them to do a bunch of different stuff. That's really intriguing. The other thing that jumped out to me about the defensive line was how active those guys were in plays away from the line of scrimmage. Some of this is, you've got guys maybe showing pressure and then backing out, but some of it was just guys chasing plays down inside out. You'd see a running back or a wide receiver outside the numbers, and it's like, what is Edric Houston doing out there, like chasing the play down? Not always that they're making the tackle, but they were very active out there, very, very aggressive. Caden McDonald had some where you're looking at him and he's practically by the sideline, not necessarily, again, making the tackle, but like out there around the ball. Very, very, very impressive, I thought. You want to see that. You want to see, this is the 4 to 6, A to B thing that Urban Meyer always preached. Mm-hmm. You're going hard every play. You're going hard, every snap until the whistle, and then the echo of the whistle and all that kind of stuff. But for a defensive line where depth was a little bit of a question mark, to see guys willing to really just kind of show that kind of burn on a play consistently throughout the game, that was really impressive.
I'm just frantically going through here, and because Caden McDonald had 8 tackles in that game, and I'm just scrolling, like, I wonder how many, when was the last time Ohio State's starting nose tackle had 8 tackles in a game, and Ty Hamilton's high was 6, and like Mike Hall's high was like 5. And what I need to do is get over to like Davon Hamilton and see what he had for the Buckeyes, because the activity there was very, very good. And it's not something that you're generally going to get out of your nose tackle. And it's not something that is expected. So when you've got a guy that's doing above and beyond that, that's impressive. And it's like, well, all right, what else do you have? What else can you do? And he played more snaps. I think he played almost like 40 snaps, which is right around, Larry Johnson said 25 or 30. And as I look at Devon Hamilton, his high was 5 as a senior and 4 as a junior. And again, that's some rarefied air. I don't know. Maybe we'd have to go back to Luke Fickell to find the last Ohio State nose tackle with 8 tackles in a game. And certainly he didn't chase all of those down. Some of those came right to him. But if the play is there, go ahead and make it. So I thought he did a good job. I do wonder, I'd mentioned after the game about would they soften up on a defensive line? And I wrote about that on Monday. Like they gave up 116 yards rushing in the second half, which is a lot. And I questioned maybe was the defensive tackles, was the interior a little soft? And then somebody replied to me on Twitter with some clips of the defensive end saying it was more of a defensive end issue. And I'm sure it's an entire defensive line issue, but the fact that you do give up the most yards as you start to wear down, yes, that's what's going to happen, but that's a lot of yards to give up in this game. And so I think it's something to pay attention to. It's a lot of yards, and it didn't get them hurt. But again, I think if Arch Manning runs more in the first half and continues to, I think if he runs more, there's more points. And Ohio State couldn't afford to give up too many more points.
Well, I think if Ohio State did give up more points, it probably changes their approach on offense a little bit, which, you could potentially score more points. It also increases your variance in terms of positive outcomes to negative outcomes and increases the likelihood you're going to turn the ball over if you're asking people to do more and all that kind of stuff. But, to your bigger point there, yeah, I think I don't want to, I think everyone should enjoy the fact that Ohio State's last 2 games were 1, win the national championship, 2, beat the number 1 team in the country. You should take some time and enjoy that, because you stressing out about Ohio State's run defense or rush offense, which we'll get to in a minute, is not going to do you any good. Like this is supposed to be fun. You're allowed to enjoy the good outcome and not be, banging the table for, well, let's talk about the process. Like you can enjoy that, and that's okay. Because frankly, I think the process was pretty okay broadly as well. But yeah, to your point, yes, there is some concern for sure about the depth of the interior of the defensive line, because it did feel like when those guys were out, you saw a little bit more success running the ball for Texas. And when you had those guys wearing down at the end of the game, you saw a little bit more success. And when Texas went tempo, you saw a little more success for Texas. So all that said, they also did give up 0 points for the first 56 minutes of the game. So, the Ohio State defense is, in conclusion, a land of contrasts. So with that said, I think it sort of transitions a little bit to the offensive side of the ball and the running game in general for Ohio State, which was, not non-existent, but it wasn't really there very often for Ohio State. I was very impressed with CJ Donaldson. I keep wanting to call him Danielson. I don't know why. CJ Donaldson. He was very impressive. I think they know exactly what he's good at, and they are going to put him in a position to do the thing that he is very good at, which is pound the ball straight ahead, fall forward for an extra 2 yards, get up, do it again. I think I mentioned this on the post-game show, but if you look at his jersey after the game, it's covered in dirt and it looks like grass stains, and it's like, this is artificial turf. Where did you get grass stains from? But he looked like, after the game, he looked like the classic Ohio State running back who had gotten 35 carries and just gotten pounded and pounded and pounded. He did what they needed him to do. It was not exciting. It was not amazing. And I think there's stuff to keep an eye on with the Ohio State offensive line in terms of just how good or not good the run blocking was at times. And I think there's some questions about, did running backs pick the right holes all the time? How what was the vision? Was there enough patience? You got lots of that stuff to sort of get cleaned up over the next month. But in all of this, Ohio State allowing Texas to run the ball. Yeah, how many teams are they going to play that are going to be better than Texas or as good as Texas this year? You're not going to have that many times that this comes up. You're not going to have that many times that you're running into a defense that's as good as Texas's defense. And you look at, some of the names that we were talking about before the game, Anthony Hill and Colin Simmons. Hill finished with 6 tackles and Simmons with 2 or 3. They were, you just watching the game on TV, it was like, I haven't heard about these. I haven't heard those names in quite a while. And those are the names that I talked to Reese Davis on Friday before the game to just sort of get his thoughts on Lee Corso, but on the game itself. And that was something that he was like, really, really had circled, like, boy, I don't know about the edge of that Ohio State, the pass protection there. And that was his big thing, that he thought that was going to be the deciding factor in the game. And it wasn't at all. Now, you're not going to play that many teams that are as good as that. So it's not something that's necessarily going to rear its head, but it's something that Ohio State's going to have to address. And I'm sure that they are well aware of that already. If you, dear friend at home, are well aware of that, I'm sure it has come up during film review and is being addressed as we speak inside the walls of the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. But they are doing it in the way that college coaches love to do it. You win the game, and then you have lots of stuff to teach off of, rather than losing the game and having to figure it out later.
For sure. C.J. Donaldson, 19 carries, 67 yards. The high last year for carries by an Ohio State running back was 17 by Quinshon Judkins in the Rose Bowl. And so I think that is also indicative of the game plan being slow and steady. We're going to pound it. And we'll go from there. And James Peoples with 10 carries, that was about what Travion Henderson averaged last year as well. And this was let's not do anything wrong. 54 total plays on offense for Ohio State. And this was just a very purposeful, this is for Texas. This is not for anybody else. This is just a special gift for Texas. Wouldn't expect this gift to be given to any other team the rest of the year. And if it is, then I think that's an issue. And I don't necessarily see a reason to do that, especially when if the issue is you don't run the ball very well, then the solution to that is, you know what, let's not throw the ball. Let's slow things down and not open things up, because why do the one thing that you're able to do? We do certainly need to see the running game open up. But again, they rushed for, I think, 5 fewer yards this year against Texas than they did last year. And I don't think you're going to look at the Cotton Bowl and say, well, clearly this Ohio State team can't run the ball. They ran it well enough over the course of the season to win a national title. But let's see what they do in the Big Ten moving forward. How about this, Tom? How about the people that we didn't see? No Malik Hartford on defense. No Bryson Rogers on offense. No
Logan George.
Logan George. But, and again, he was a little banged up in camp, but he was not on the availability report. So I thought maybe his presence would be a little diminished, but this was a very tight-knit group of players. And then the fact that you do see Devin Sanchez as the dime, he's the first defensive back in, and he's out there in the fourth quarter. We saw Jarquez Carter in the fourth quarter as well for a few snaps. And then, of course, Nate Roberts, the tight end, coming in on the 4th and goal from the 1, which is still one of my favorite plays in terms of just the cojones to go ahead and bring in a true freshman tight end, put him at fullback, and then run behind him. So we knew we were going to get some answers as to where the trust lies with the coaches. And that's not to say that they don't trust the other players. It's just this was going to be a very tight group of the circle of trust was going to be very constricted in this one. It'll expand more, certainly. We'll get to see Bo Jackson. We'll get to see Mylan Graham, all of these guys that we got to see in camp and in spring and are excited about. And Riley Pettyjohn, who made coming down on the very first kickoff, made an impact there. We'll see him making an impact on defense. We'll see more of Peyton Pierce and all of that. But it was just interesting to see who played and who didn't in this one.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a lot of the guys who didn't play and some of the guys, the guys who were people you wouldn't have expected to see at all, who played at least a decent role. 11 snaps for Devin Sanchez, especially some of the times that he was out there, where he was out there in the first half. He's out there in the last drive with the game on the line. That was a legitimate wow for me. The other thing that I thought was interesting was the guys who played every snap on defense, 67 snaps. The guys who played 67 snaps, Jalen McClain, Caleb Downs, Jermaine Matthews, Davis Negmanosin. I mean, you've got, that's it. And then Lorenzo Styles played all but 2. So I think he probably came out for a couple goal line snaps, and that was it. But Lorenzo Styles, 65 snaps. Arvell Reese, 64 snaps. I mean, those are guys who we had talked about, is Lorenzo Styles, is he going to lose snaps to to Caleb Downs, if they're going to have Malik Hartford out there as one of the safeties. Nope. He is someone who they tell you, hey, we really like him. He's really and we're relaying that to people, and it's like, really? It's like, this is what we're being told, that they really like him. They can tell you one thing: when you're playing the number one team in the country, what they're showing you is what matters. They think Lorenzo Styles is going to be a really crucial part of this team. I think Davis Igbinosun and Jermaine Matthews, Caleb Downs, whatever. We can have the Caleb Downs is Superman conversation, and we can do that every week. You already know that Caleb Downs is Superman. So let's talk real quickly about Jermaine Matthews and Davis Igbinosun, both of whom were fantastic on Saturday. Igbinosun, you can't have a conversation about Igbinosun without going, oh boy, here we go again. He's gonna get, and no penalties. They were going after him at times and had good coverage. I don't know that I remember even seeing oh boy, he got away with one kind of clutch and grab kind of, like, it was good coverage. It was not like, oh boy, they should have thrown a flag there. I think he had a really, really good game. And Jermaine Matthews gave up a touchdown, the passing touchdown to Texas that they scored. He had good coverage on it. He was in coverage. He had good position. He had his head around. It was a kind of a weird ball that had to come back to get it. But it was that was not a one that I looked at and thought, oh, that was really on Jermaine Matthews. And then he had the interception as well, which I was very amused. We talked on the post-game show about the fact that 2 plays before that, I had said to one of the photographers on the sideline, man, you can just feel the big mistake is coming from one of these young quarterbacks. And 2 plays later, threw the interception to Jermaine Matthews. It was very funny to watch the broadcast and see Gus Johnson at probably that exact same time talking about, boy, they really need to let Arch throw it downfield. And Joel Klatt explaining that the coverage downfield has been too good. And so you really can't just, and then immediately he throws the pick. I think that this is an Ohio State defense where the secondary is a real strength for this team. So I don't know, the quality of passing games and quarterback play in the Big Ten and all that is never exactly the strong point for the league. I think it's going to be very challenging for people to throw on this Ohio State team, and just because the secondary is so good. And then and we've talked about how good they're feeling about the linebackers. So then it's, boy, if they can get the defensive line, if they get to the point where they feel good about the defensive line and you stay reasonably healthy, this could be a real, real good defense again. And I think you're already seeing some signs that Matt Patricia is going to be able to be creative enough to sort of work around, hey, we feel like we have more strength here as opposed to here. We can work with that. Like I got it. I can reroute the flux capacitor and we'll make this work.
I think he could probably do some things to just slow down the progression a little bit in terms of changing the picture, and then that helps the pass rush. What we do need to be careful about is the decided schematic advantage, going overboard with the Bill Belichick tree coming from the NFL and not getting to the Charlie Weiss thing. Although, at least so far, now there is some testimony as opposed to all of Charlie Weiss's theory 20 years ago when he said, well, I'm from the NFL. I don't know if you've heard it. I come from the NFL.
I'm from the NFL and I'm here to help.
Yes, and I'm all out of bubble gum.
Well, I think this is sort of the macro version of the micro version is, we've got a real good offensive script for the first drive, and then we'll see how it goes after that. Once the opposing team adjusts, how do you adjust to the adjustment? You're going to have sort of the macro version of that now. Not this week, not next week, not the week after that when they're off. But, you're going to start to see that maybe September 27th when we're out in Washington. You're going to start to see, okay, now you have a game of tape where people know, okay, this is what you really want to do because you're not screwing around against Texas and showing stuff that you're not doing. We don't really mean it. We're just putting this on tape. That's not what you're doing against Texas. You're winning the football game, and that's your only concern. So now you've got, now the word is out. Now you're not going to catch people completely by surprise with some of the stuff you're doing. So, okay, now how do teams adjust to that? And how does Matt Patricia adjust back to those adjustments? And how much more stuff does he have in his toolbox? Jim Knowles used to talk constantly about having, well, I got lots of stuff in my toolbox, and you've sort of seen it over the years. So then you go, okay, well, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. And then what you're going to do is you're probably going to do this, which means that what I want to do is I want to do that to counter your counter. This is how football has gone for, 100 years. So this is nothing new, but this is all part of, it's week one. Don't overreact to the good stuff. Don't overreact to the bad stuff. You don't need to build the Matt Patricia statue just yet. You don't need to build the Ohio State will never be able to run the ball again. I don't know. What's the opposite of a statue? Scapegoat to burn, like a Wicker Man thing. I don't know, but you don't need to, you don't need to build a statue. You don't need to build a Wicker Man. You can just, it's fine. It's week one. Things are all going to change a month from now, 2 months from now. And January is a long way away, and things will look very different by the time we get to January too.
I got to say, the instant reaction show and this show, you're giving people some incredible ideas on how to react to things positively and or negatively, but mostly negatively. Tom, are you okay?
No, listen, that's what we're here for. We are here to just provide you, not endorse anything. We're just saying, like, listen, if you want to do, take direct action, there's lots of ways you do it. I'm not personally advocating any of it. I'm just saying, like, that's a thing that people do sometimes.
And the last thing for me is the Fox broadcast, they need to up the mics and let the people hear the crowd, because it was a very good crowd, and it didn't seem to come across over the television.
Yeah, 100% on that. That was, you have so many people. I saw Texas fans on Twitter saying it was the loudest crowd that they'd ever been a part of. I saw lots of Ohio State people who've been to a lot of games say that was one of the loudest crowds they'd ever been a part of. And it never comes across on the Fox broadcast. Their crowd mics are just, there are places where the crowd mics are too hot, and that's annoying in a different way. You can watch on TV and come away with, why do they keep false starting? I don't understand. It doesn't sound that loud. What's wrong with them? And this is all stuff that's done in the production truck. Like, they can crank the mic as loud as they want or put it as quiet as they want. I would think you want the atmosphere. That's what makes college football is the atmosphere, the crowd's going crazy, the band's playing, all that kind of stuff. And you don't really get that on the Fox broadcast. And, frankly, watching some of the other broadcasts, watching the Michigan game on NBC and watching the Penn State game on CBS and then watching the Notre Dame Miami game on ABC, I don't love the Fox TV, the production level. It's just a little stale. It's just a little, they have the Steadicam guy who's out on the field, and his primary job seems to be getting in my way personally. But, that's like, oh, well, we have the Steadicam guy. So, so that's that's our fun production thing. And it's like, yeah, you could do some other things, but yeah, I'm with you on the crowd noise. Like, get the atmosphere in there. We don't need to hear. You need to be able to hear Gus and Joel clearly, but you don't need to, there can be other pieces of there, and they can also shut up and let the crowd carry the broadcast sometimes too.
Well, I also wonder how much of this is just Fox's desire to have Gus heard, and not that he does every game, but you're going to want to have the same production rules in effect for all of these games. But I think they're doing the game a disservice by not including the noise of the game as part of the broadcast.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all, but you will, no matter what you do, you will have people complaining because you have the old people who can't, there's too much background noise. I can't hear Gus, but all that said, I do want to say, I do think Joel Klatt did a good job on the color commentary at times I thought some of his schematic stuff that he talked about was, like, for example, the here's why they're not throwing downfield and then immediately intercept. I mean, like he did a good job sort of being a little bit ahead of stuff on that. So, I don't want this to be overly negative, but yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. The combination of the camera location at Ohio State, which the camera deck is way, way, way high. It's just underneath the press box. It's one of the highest camera locations in all of college football. And so that it's further away. It's not as good an angle. You'd like a little bit of a lower, flatter angle. They used to have the camera positions like in C deck, And that was, when in the late 90s before they redid it. And the games just looked closer. When you're watching a game at Clemson, you're watching a game at, I don't know, wherever else, Penn State or Michigan or wherever. It's just a lower angle. It doesn't look as like you're looking down inside of, like a snow globe or something.
So anything else before we get out of here?
I think we've covered enough, and we'll probably spend most of next week's Grambling Rewatch talking also about the Texas game. So we'll have plenty of time then.
Or snow globes. So there you go. If you could hit the thumbs up before you go, we'd appreciate that. Sign up for the channel if you've not yet done so. Subscribe. We would appreciate that. That always helps us. And of course, you can continue to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We're talking there about this game, other games on the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. Would love to talk to you there as well. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys later.